Jim, we continue to react to the news that Wayne McKinney III, Coronado product, USD, each of the last 3 years, is heading to the Mesa to San Diego State for his final year of college hoops. Mark Zeigler reporting on that today in the Union-Tribune. Of course, nobody covers San Diego State better than Mark with the UT. He's back with us here on John and Jim. And Mark, we appreciate it. You've been so gracious, obviously, with your time. It's been a busy start to the offseason for SDSU. So take us a little bit behind the scenes. How does something like this transpire? Obviously, Lamont Butler goes in the portal and leaves, and presumably that presents an opportunity like this across town for Wayne McKinney, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Aztec coaches have known about Wayne McKinney going back to the days in high school, and so he's a year behind Lamont Butler, and they looked at him in high school and really liked him, but they just thought they were too alike in the way they played, their size, their styles, and they didn't want to have them. Didn't think it was good to have them both in the same team because their skill sets kind of overlap. And so, they stopped recruiting them, and Wayne really wanted to stay in San Diego and ended up going to USD. It's a little bit of a steal for USD and Sam Scholl, a great recruit, turned out to be a really good player. And so he kind of goes through 3 years at USD, always eyeing San Diego State, but knowing Lamont's there. And then it looks like Lamont, might leave. He jumps in the portal. Lamont kind of expresses, and the word kind of leaks out that it looks like Lamont's going to stay. He withdraws his name from the portal, and then Lamont leaves, and he jumps back in the portal, and San Diego State calls him. And it moved very quickly from there. He was back in the portal on Monday, and it was kind of done by last night and announced officially this morning. So it moved quickly, but that's just kind of the way the world works right now in college basketball.
How surprised are you about Elijah entering the transfer portal?
Well, I'm surprised because he's kind of their greatest ambassador of the program. I mean, when they would have a recruiting visit and he was available, he would be the host, and not just for the player, but for the families as well. He spoke so highly, so eloquently about the program, and he talked about things like, yes, there isn't as much NIL here, but it's the greatest place in the world, and you can't put a price tag on it. I love it here. It's been great for my development. And he actually hosted a recruit, a week earlier, and all of a sudden, in their off saying, I'm going to go in the portal, and I think it caught him by surprise, and I think it's too bad probably for him. It's too bad, obviously, for the team. I think they'll find somebody maybe equally, maybe even better in terms of talent on the floor. But what I think Elijah brought was that culture that Brian Dutcher talks about so much, trying to pair transfers with guys who've been in the program 3 and 4 years. Since they were freshmen and had that culture passed down from their predecessors, and they pass it to the new guys. And so it leaves you with a little bit of a void in terms of a bunch of guys, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys have been in the program multiple years and really know that culture. And so they're not going to have that next year. And that's a shame. And that's, I think, where the greatest loss with Elijah will be.
Mark Zeigler, Union-Tribune, with us right now on John and Jim. So to follow up on that point, does that mean now that San Diego State is seeking, a veteran power forward? Like, what are you looking for Elijah Saunders' skill set, or are you looking for another type of skill set out of a player that potentially replaces him or some of his minutes next year?
Well, I don't know if they'll find someone with his sort of his skill set and match with his size, because remember, he's 230, 235 pounds, 6'8". And I think when he came in, they kind of envisioned him as being sort of a baby Jaden Ledee and kind of taking over that Jaden Ledee role. He never really materialized into that inside force. He didn't seem to be real comfortable operating in the paint and banging with guys. He much preferred to be on the perimeter as a pick and pop for shooting threes. But I think what they'll look for is ideally someone who is versatile defensively. So if you look at the Mountain West, for example, last year, there's a guy like Keenan Blackshear at Nevada, who's 6'6", point guard, big, strong, can back guys down. You can't guard him with a short guy. You can't guard him with a big, slower guy. You need that in-between versatile defender. And they used to have that with Keyshawn Johnson. And Elijah had some of those duties last year. He ended up guarding Blackshear. Now, Blackshear's gone, but there'll be other players like him. And so I think they're looking for someone like 6'7", who can shoot the three at a high level, and can also guard multiple positions, whether it's a 4-man or whether it's a 3 or a 2. because they like to switch screens so much. So I think that's the type of player they'll look for. I don't know if it'll be someone quite as burly as Elijah, but I think it will be in that sort of range. And, there are some of those players out there, and there's some in the portal right now. But, there's a lot of competition for everybody. So we'll see if they can land one.
With Nick Boyd here now, Miles Byrd hopefully taking that next step here. What kind of role do you see for Wayne McKinney here?
Well, it gives them a lot of kind of offensive versatility because they can go small now against teams because Wayne can handle the point. And I think you can play with Nick Boyd because Nick Boyd shoots it so well from three. I mean, he had 2 seasons where he was over 40 in each of them, and then another one where he was 35. I think his career is 37, 38%. So he's a good 3-point shooter, and they could push him over to the quote-unquote 2 guard. They also could kind of have that, which you saw with Darian Trammell and Lamont Butler, the sort of that 2 guard front with 2 ball handlers. It's an offense that, Michigan a few years ago used in the gym line really effectively when they went to the Final Four. And so you can do that, or you can just have McKinney as a straight swap for Nick Boyd at the point, have him come off the bench, bring some energy, some defense, and go with a bigger lineup with guys like Reese Waters is 6'6" and Miles Byrd is 6'6", 6'7", and then maybe you can see a Magoon Guath playing the 4 at 7 feet, and then Jared Coleman Jones as a true 5-man at 6'10". That's a pretty big lineup. So I think adding him allows you to go big or small. And he's the type of guy, look, if he ends up not starting, I don't think he'll be upset at all. He's so happy to be at San Diego. I talked with him last night. I mean, this is his dream. And he's going to do whatever they ask him to do, whether it's start and play 35 minutes or come off the bench and play 20, 25. He's going to be happy with it. And that's just a great player to have when you're constructing a roster.
Mark Zeigler with the UT with us right now on John and Jim. It's funny you say that, Mark, and correct me if I'm wrong. We're in this new age. There's so much movement. There's so much money across the country. But when I look at the players that San Diego State was able to quote unquote nab, it fits that San Diego State cultural DNA, like winning above other aspects. Of course, NIL is playing a role out there, but maybe not the same role for all people. Like we had Nick Boyd on. He said he wants to win. He prioritized that over NIL. Wayne McKinney, what you just said about him. Jared Coleman Jones, what we've learned about him over the course of the last handful of days. How would you characterize these 3 additions in terms of what their desires are, and what does it say about them landing at San Diego State?
Well, look, San Diego State's in a different kind of position than a lot of these other schools. And if you look at the Sweet 16 last year, there were 14 power conference schools, all very well resourced. Then there were 2 quote unquote mid-major teams from mid-major conferences in Gonzaga and San Diego State. Now Gonzaga is a blue blood. They're a major conference, high major program with the amount of resources, financial resources they have. So you take them out of the equation, and you got San Diego State, which has resources, but not in that sort of stratosphere. Still doesn't charter all its games, doesn't, has NIL, but not that kind of NIL. And so they've got to find their niche. And I've been comparing them sort of the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, maybe without the metrics and the analytics, but in the sense that they're going to have a different way of putting things together. And by that, I mean, they're going to construct a roster. They're not going to go collect talent. You look what Eric Musselman's doing at USC, and it might work. He's collecting a ton of mid-major guys who all average 15 to 20 points a game. He's going to have 7, 8, 9 of those guys, 10 of those guys in the roster, and he's going to somehow try to figure it out. San Diego State's looking at it as we want to have pieces that fit us, fit our culture, mindsets that fit our culture, and we're going to win with chemistry. They might not have at every position the depth of talent or the same level of talent of some of these big time programs, but they're going to be a team, and that's their idea. And I think you're seeing the way they're constructing their roster. They're doing that the same way they recruited. They never go after guys just because they're recruiting stars. They went after guys because they felt like they fit the culture. You've seen the same thing here. They got a guy from Florida Atlantic, a guy from Middle Tennessee, and a guy from USD. And we'll see if it works. But these are guys that they feel like fit in a lot of different areas. And they're not worried about their numbers. They're not worried about their stats. They're worried about winning. And so I think it's a fascinating experiment to see. I'm glad we get to watch it because I don't know how fulfilling it is to, like Kentucky, just go out and have a blank check and just buy a bunch of players and see if you can win. I mean, that's great if you can win, but it's a different kind of challenge to what San Diego State's doing, and it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be fascinating to watch all this take place next year. I'm really looking forward to next season, maybe more than any other.
Yeah, a lot of new players. We could see a lot of different rotations and lineups, and it is going to be exciting. And one of the players that I feel like could be maybe the most exciting because he's such an unknown, Magoon Gwath. What have you heard about their plan for him for next year?
Well, one thing about Brian Dutchard is you look at how he treated him this year. He could have played him. He would have played. He would have been in the rotation. He would have gotten some minutes, but he just didn't think it was fair to his development. And the same thing happened with Jalen McDaniels and the way he redshirted his first year. 2 years later, he's in the NBA draft, getting drafted and playing in the NBA. And so they're going to take it slowly. I mean, they took it slowly last year, and they're not going to put too much pressure on him. That's why I think they want to get another piece right now that maybe could start, so that, it's a lot of pressure to put on a kid like Magoon, who really hasn't played much basketball in 2 years, coming off a major injury, to throw him out there and say you got to start and average 12 and 10 a game. I mean, that's a lot of pressure to put on a young guy, and he's also pretty young too. So I think they'll bring him along slowly, and there'll be flashes next year where people look at this guy and go, "Oh my gosh, this guy is going to be really, really good." But there'll also be moments where he's going to be a raw freshman and turn it over and get pushed around, and you'll say, "Oh, he looks like a freshman." So I think it's a good situation where they'll bring him along slowly and be patient. You've got a veteran head coach who doesn't feel this pressure like, I got to win right now or I'm going to get fired. He can do what's right for the kid, what's right for the program, and I think you'll see that. The one guy too, I think people should keep an eye on, and with Elijah gone, it might accelerate his development a little bit. He'll get more minutes earlier than maybe he would have if Elijah was here playing 30 minutes a game at the 4. Is Farrell Compton, the freshman from Las Vegas. I'm telling you, this guy is an absolute freak. He plays at the highest rate, has the highest motor I've ever seen in a high school kid. And he's not terribly polished and skilled in terms of shooting the 3, but this guy brings energy to the floor, blocks shots, has really long arms, and is just a fierce competitor. And it's a lot like JT Toppin. I don't know if he'll be that good as a freshman, but we'll see. He has that potential. The kid from New Mexico, who's the Mountain West freshman of the year. So keep an eye on both those guys. It's going to be exciting because they'll get some more minutes than maybe they would have otherwise. Is
any part of taking it very slow with Gwath have to do with what college basketball is nowadays, which is, transfer portal, NIL, that they don't want to get, a bunch of tape out on him, and they want to make sure that he stays at San Diego State for as long as possible. And when they do kind of unleash him, that he's going to be playing his best basketball here at San Diego State.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly you can make an argument for that, but I think, look, there was zero tape on him last year, and I don't think that was the reason why they decided to keep him redshirted. But there'll be enough tape on him next year that people will know what he's all about and see the potential. Again, though, until you get a guy in the game, you just don't know. I mean, I've seen him in practice. I watched Jaden Ledee in practice for a full year and thought he was just going to be a breakout star. And he really, he was a good, solid contributor, but he wasn't a breakout star his first year that he played at San Diego State. It was the next year where he got more comfortable with the system and he was a breakout star. And I think Magoon will kind of be on that same path. He had the redshirt year. Next year will kind of be a role. He'll have flashes, and then the following year he'll be a breakout star. But I tell you, there'll be enough tape that in this NIL era, I think teams will come after him hard when they see a 7-footer who can shoot threes, block shots, run the floor, handle the ball, has a great feel for the game. And so this is where the NIL maybe isn't as important this year, but it's going to be really important next year to keep a guy like him for that breakout season, which I think will be the following year.
Mark, before you go, I want to say a year ago, every time you came on, I asked you for an update on conference realignment, and there was no update until there was an update, so to speak, with everything that transpired. This year, I'm asking you every single time you come on about this. It's intriguing to me, this MTE, and so many letters, MTE NIL event. This idea that there's a name, image, and likeness tournament potentially in Las Vegas. We've talked about it. You've written about it. Any update? Are we still too soon in front of that, or what is your speculation as it relates to that tournament?
Well, I think they're getting closer. San Diego State was originally in an NIL in Palm Springs. They do not appear to be in that anymore, so that should tell you something. That they're holding out for this. My feeling, my gut tells me there's going to be an event in Las Vegas probably sometime in November. And what it looks like in terms of format, I don't know yet. And maybe they don't know yet. Or they're not telling us, at least, whether it's a full tournament or it's just games and matchups. But I think there'll be some really, really high-powered teams there, and San Diego State will be part of it. And that would be a huge boost for NIL. And again, like I said, look, they needed NIL this year to kind of collect some of these guys they are getting, but they're not going to be able to compete with, the NIL numbers being thrown around, for a lot of these players are 500,000 to $1 million. I don't think everyone's getting that. I think a lot of guys are getting more like in the 400 range, but even that is really rich for San Diego State's blood right now in terms of its collective and what it can do. And getting into that tournament could add up to another $1 million in revenue instantly. And that starts to put them into that class where they can start at least having more conversations with more players. And again, like I said, keeping their players, because the difference from last year's roster to next year's roster is that it's going to be a younger roster. So if a guy like Farrell Compton really explodes and has a season like JT Toppin just did JT Toppin, he hopped to the portal, and there are reports that he was being offered like $500,000 to stay in New Mexico, and he still jumped in the portal.
Wow.
So those are the type of things, I think, when we talk about NIL, it's not so much this year and what happened. It's going to be next year in keeping some of these young guys. Miles Heide is on a real arc of improvement. Miles Bird could have a breakout year. And so, Nick Boyd has 2 years of eligibility left. So there's a lot of temptation out there, and I think they're going to need to be able to step up to at least keep some of these guys for that following season.
Fascinating. The state of college athletics truly is fascinating. San Diego State, again, trying to reload for the upcoming 24-25 season. Like you said earlier, Mark, it's certainly intriguing. It's kind of fascinating. It seems like they have an amazing amount of talent. It'll be interesting to see how Brian Dutcher kind of deploys it come next fall on the Mesa. Mark, it's always great stuff. We truly appreciate it. And when there's more news, we hope to have you on again.
Yeah, my pleasure. One more thing I'll say real quickly about Wayne McKinney that I didn't say earlier is I think another key piece that people may not realize is he's going to bring leadership. He was a captain at USD, and there's a little bit of a leadership void on this team, right? They lost pretty much every starter from last year, every starter who started a game against UConn in Sweet 16. And, they lost some of the veteran leaders in this team, and they need a guy who understands San Diego. And while it's his first year in the program, I think he'll immediately step in and be a leader. And that's something that, you can't put a price tag on, and that's going to be valuable for them.
And your colleague, Bryce Miller, wrote something fascinating. I just stumbled on it when we saw this Wayne McKinney news, what he wrote last November about his father was murdered when he was 5. He had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was in high school. He didn't really publicly talk about it. He has a fascinating story. He's overcome a ton of adversity to put himself in the position to be playing college basketball, let alone at the top of the sport at San Diego State next year. Mark, great stuff. Great reporting. We'll do it again soon.
Okay. Talk to you guys.
All right. Great stuff. That was good.
I feel optimistic about next season. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Now,
when did you was there a domino effect for you? Like, did you need something to hit one domino and they all fell over for you? Like, were you skeptical? Elijah knew?
No, because I said that wait to see who they go and get in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wayne McKinney is a guy that you can instantly. He can instantly be a guy that can impact next year.
100%. 4th-year player. Yeah.
Score, defense. You just look up his highlights.
He's a very good player.
He's a very good player. He reminds me a lot of D Wade.
Yeah, there we go. That's great. And Magungwa reminds you of Wemby.
Right.
So it's perfect.
They have
a good combination.
A Wemby D Wade combo, pick and roll, and this team's gonna be unstoppable next year.
I'm excited to talk to Brian Dutcher tomorrow at 3:30 about this upcoming year.
Because this is the thing about college sports. Like I know everyone was upset about Elijah and Micah and Lamont, but the beauty of college sports is every single year fans are able to get excited about the new players that are coming in.
New version
of players, like recruiting. And now it's basically transfer portal news. Like, ooh, this guy's in the portal. Let's go after him. And then whenever you see this guy's been linked to San Diego State, you get excited. Trust me, I get all your texts.
Yeah.
I know you are excited. And that's just what college athletics is. Now it's just the way of the sport with the NIL.
Right. And if you happen to be listening and have like $5 million that you could part ways with, MesaFoundationSD.org.
Yeah.
Or less.
It's maybe like 3 million would be good.
Or $20. Mesa Foundation.
Or $20.
SD.org.